Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and we are about to get started with the DRT, the Dispatchers Roundtable, and this is going to be round number 25. But as always, a word from our sponsors.
At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at InDigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned. All right. Welcome back. Once again, this is the DRT. This is going to be round 25. I'm excited to have everybody on and to welcome you all back. You know, when we get into these months where all the holidays are going, everything is getting crazy. And I only do this twice a month. And that's how crazy it's been that we've got the one that is that we're doing here for November. But next month, we're going to have 2, maybe 3 rounds of the Dispatchers Roundtable. There are a lot of awesome discussions that are going to be coming up, and we're going to jump right in. So all of you that are joining us here live and in the audience, don't be afraid to throw in any questions that you have for the audience or anything as we are going through this discussion here. Again, this is going to be an excellent conversation that we're going to be having here with, for public safety and such. And also roll call. Where are you watching from? Where are you at? And how are you doing? How was your holiday? So throw all that in there. I'm going to be bringing everybody up here and going through some intros, and then we're going to jump right into the discussion. So first off, I have Roxy Van Gundy.
What's up? How's it going?
What is going on, my friend? Director of Line
Came out of my box.
That's right. So for those who are watching right now, a brief background on you, please.
My name is Roxy. I like long walks in the park. No. Okay.
Aww,
so I'm Roxy Van Gundy. I am the director of Lyon County Emergency Communication Center in Emporia, Kansas. For those of you who are like, where the heck is that? It's about 100 miles west of Kansas City. I have been in dispatch here twice. So I manage my home center. This is where all the magic started. And I've also worked for a state organization in Alaska for public safety. So gotten 2 different perspectives.
Very nice. Very nice. We got people who are popping into the comments here already. We got LeFranc. We have Halcyon. And then, of course, our good buddy Hank. And he says he's in Texas and he's working on a dryer. Good luck, my friend. I hope you have fun. And our next guest is going to be Rob Big Mac Mcmullen.
Good afternoon.
It's like, where are you, man?
I know. I was like,
hello.
It's slow motion going on here. Good afternoon. I am Rob Mcmullen, Executive Director of Knox County 911 in Vincennes, Indiana, which is about 35 miles north of Evansville. or 150 miles southwest of Indianapolis, about 200 mile from Fort Wayne. No, I don't know. It's
Holy cow! I was like, damn,
we
you're
can
going
we
all
can
the
get
way
it.
out.
We can get everywhere. So I've been
You're
here.
gonna Google Map this.
Yeah, exactly. Dropped pins everywhere. I've been here for about 2 years, but I'm on my 20. Actually, I'm going on my 24th year in public safety. So,
Wow.
and 10 years as a director. Before that, it was all dispatcher supervisor. So,
Nice.
anyway, I'm a former NENA president, Indiana NENA president, and kind of a big deal. So,
Well
yeah,
done, man. Well done. Well, I am glad to have you both here. Thank you very much for joining us here.
happy to
And
be
then
on.
our next guest here is going to be Chad Labrie, and he is the director of pre-sales at Carbine.
Hey everyone,
Hello, hello.
how's it going?
So,
Sales at Carbine.
Hey everyone.
Oh, I hear an echo.
The big echo.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that's coming from. Let me see.
look at my Mountain Dew bottle.
No, everything is there.
That's crazy.
Oh, that's kind of crazy. Chad.
Distracted.
Yeah, distracted squirrel.
That's
Chad,
right.
thank you very much for being on, and a little brief background on you, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, director of sales enablement here at Carbine. Been with the company for a little over 3 years. But prior to that, came from the public safety arena myself. Was hired by the Maine State Police in my 22nd year in public safety. Worked as the executive director for Penobscot Regional Communications Center here in Maine as well. Past state NENA president, and couldn't imagine life outside of dispatch and serving the community. So yeah, it's been a great journey.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being here, and I'm excited to get into this discussion. And last but certainly not least, we have Stephen O'Connor, and he is the Chief Technology Officer at Mark 43.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Hey, welcome. A brief background on you, please.
Sure. So I can't say that I've had a longer public safety career than the distinguished folks here, but I've been at Mark 43 for about 7 years, going on 8 years now. Mark 43 is a public safety software company that builds actually the CAD and RMS systems that are used in dispatch and sort of with law enforcement. Prior to that, I was in sort of financial services tech. I was at another New York startup called ZocDoc. And then prior to that, did my master's at Lincoln Laboratories and did a prior tour in the Air Force Cyber Command. That was essentially before it was that. But spent a lot of time in the confluence of sort of government and technology, and sort of found that this is a really good fit for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, how has that, kind of the change been a little bit now, being public safety? Is it kind of the same as how it was, in stuff that you've done previously, or just a new beast?
I would say there's a lot of things that you can take from in the same kind of perspective. I think everybody in the government side and the military especially are really focused on the mission, really focused on sort of that mission first attitude. And that really goes in the same way into public safety. I would say even more so in some respects, especially when you're talking about first responders on the front lines of sort of like dealing with the everyday sort of incidents out there. I would say in a lot of respects, it's more than you find in the military, where there's a lot of training to do, sitting around a lot of the time. And you have these big sort of large events that happen, whereas in public safety, it's every day you're out in the line. So I think that mentality really translates and really keeps me really excited about the industry.
Awesome. That is good, man. That is good to hear. Always having that passion, especially in this industry, is driven by passion. That's what I love. So welcome all of you here. This is going to be a good discussion. What I want to remind the audience, as I kind of said in the beginning, if you have any questions or any comments or anything, please throw them in there in the comments. We can go through those as we are going through this discussion as well. And also a reminder of the goal. And the goal of this discussion is to discuss the siloed environment at the 911 Center and how companies can integrate better rather than adding more and more screens and products that overload call takers and dispatchers. So what I want to do first is I want to start out with Roxy and Rob, just to kind of talk about how things are at their center. And I know that both of them have been implementing new technology and such, and a lot of upgrades, a lot of different things. So Roxy, let's start with you. How have things been?
Been a little rough, Ricardo. Been a little rough. We've had a very big year of change. I think in the last 18 months, we've gotten 6
COVID.
Well, that. And we've gone through 6 pretty big technology changes. What's frustrating to me with those technology changes is I feel like as a small center, we get forgotten quite a bit from a technology industry standpoint. I think that sometimes when a company comes in to sell you something, they sell it as a Cadillac, and to make it work in your center, it ends up working like a Pinto. And we've really struggled with that. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I mean,
Yeah,
that's our experience here.
This is good. Yes.
We got a new radio last year, so we upgraded to 800 megahertz radio. With that, we got a new recorder that took me a year to get everybody together to get working in a way that I needed it to work. We also got a new mass notification system with that upgrade that still does not work with our CAD. And we upgraded to online protocols, which has been literally the only thing that has gone somewhat okay. I wouldn't call it great, but I'd say somewhat okay. It's been a real struggle for us, and I'm a one-woman show. I have to do my job and do all the things and be all the things for all the people. And I've spent most of the last 18 months dealing with technology problems and dealing with upgrades that have not gone as seamlessly as everybody claims they would. So that's my story.
And of course, it would be the protocols that are the things that are working more than anything else, right?
But that's not to say they didn't come with some big problems. We had some large problems that had to be worked out. But they were worked out fairly quickly. Our CAD vendor and the protocol vendor had big clashes that I, as the customer, had to solve. I, as the customer, had to get people together to talk about their problems to serve me, the customer, who just spent $200,000 with your company. So it wasn't without its challenges, but it was definitely the least frustrating upgrade that we did.
When you were having the conversations with them and everything, were some of these like what I had mentioned in this intro here about integration, versus the seamless integration versus adding more screens and other things to do everything that you wanted to do? I mean, were that some of the discussions that were had? And I mean, I would hope that you were also listened to, like all of it was taken into consideration and everything when putting this all together.
I think that to some degree I was listened to, but I think a big problem is you get a salesman who comes in here and says, yep, that is exactly what our product can do for you. And then you get assigned a project manager who says, oh no, I don't know why he said that because it really works like this. Well, that's not what I want. That's not what I asked for. So you get passed along to so many people, and you really do have to be very clear and say the same thing over and over and over again. And the term seamless integration, that seems like a unicorn to me because I just did not experience that whatsoever.
So I want to go to Chad here really quick before, because I was going to go to Rob next to have his story about his center, but I want to go to Chad here really quick because you come from the center as well, a former 911 director, and the spot that you're at in Carbine. What are some of the ways that you, as an industry partner, some of the things that you bring to the table for this company, coming from our side to say, look, this is how we can do this and make it better and maybe move more towards that seamless integration?
Yeah, thank you very much. So that's kind of how I came into Carbine, right? I wanted to change the way that our vendors were actually looked at in taking that way, because I was in the same situation as Roxy as a director, right? You get all these promises, and then you have the vendors come in, and it's not that they didn't deliver, it just wasn't delivered maybe the way that we were probably explained right out of the get-go, right? And that was one of the major things that I wanted to change, or make Carbine known for, is that we weren't the normal, right? We weren't delivering the way that others were. And how do we do that? Well, one is just changing the process of how you deliver, delivering on what is promised at the beginning. So you got to really have your operations folks on the vendor side, your operations folks and your sales team really united to make sure that the right message is being delivered. And it all comes down to messaging, right? At the end of the day, I, as a director, always wanted to purchase something known to me that is what is being delivered. And oftentimes, like Roxy said, there was lots of painstaking hours that kind of went into going back and forth to make sure that happened. So we wanted to make sure that that wasn't the case. So our delivery schemes were totally changed. We, right down to training. So dispatchers should not change their lifestyles, right? Midnight shift is always the forgotten child of the dispatch center. So, having teams come in that actually deliver the training on the midnight shift, not just the day shift, right? When the normal people are awake, well, it's the normal people actually work the midnight shift. So changing the way that we deliver, changing the way promises are made, and making that delivery team part of the sales process. So that's how we've kind of changed that. So that way everybody knows what's going on before actual paper is signed.
Yeah, that is excellent to have everyone on the same page, right? I know when I was on the other side as an industry partner, that was one of the things that we worked on a lot. We had all of these pre-meetings, and a lot of the folks that were in there were coming from dispatch as well. And so we were able to put in all of our information and say, this is the way it should go. And these are the questions that you're most likely going to be asked. So it was good to have more of us that were there that come from dispatch to be able to help, I guess, kind of push all of this forward a lot better and more smooth. Before I get to Stephen over here, because I want to get your thoughts on this as well, but I want to go to Rob really quick to kind of talk about his center and some of the other things that they've implemented there. Specifically also their texting platform that they have, because there are different integrations that can be done where you are either adding a screen or it's just sitting right on the desktop where everything else is at, and it's on the same screen. Rob?
Well, I'm sorry that Roxy had such a hard time, because I will say that in my PSAP with the implementation of new technology, I don't have any. I've not had those issues, other than the fact that just the addition from my employees here, where they're not a big fan of change. But over the past 2 years while I've been here, we've upgraded our CAD, added different emergency communication or emergency notification system, the texting to 911, smart 911. We're adding QHIT, we're adding frontline QA software, we're adding agency 360. I mean, we're just like, I'm a huge technology person, I always have been. And I've never had any issues. I don't know if it's because I start out and telling the people I don't want to be bullshitted, and don't come in and don't jerk my chain, because I know how it is. I've been around long enough to know that, this isn't the way it is, and that's not the way it's going to go. And I don't like the car salesman type salespeople. I tell them, I don't want cold calls. I don't want this. I don't want that. If I need something, I will call you, and don't call me, because that's not I've got too much other shit to do than deal with that stuff. But that's just me. Our texting platform, as you stated, Ricardo, is through InDigital. Through everyone in the state of Indiana has that, and we're able to initiate inbound 911 call or inbound 911 text, and also we can initiate the outbound to where we can initiate a text from our caller or to our callers if we have a 901 hang up call. And I can tell you that, most people, when you get a 901 hang up call, you call them back and maybe 2 out of 10 people will answer you because they see either the government number or an unknown number and they don't answer. But when you have like the inbound and outbound texting, 8 out of the 10 people will respond and we will get I'm sorry, I did not realize it. My kid was on the phone and it's just the I will say it's the best way to go with the embedded texting and inbound and outbound. We have the option to add the additional screen, but we just leave it. Currently, we're running 6 screens in our dispatch center. We've got one for our NCIC, one for the CAD, actually 2 for the CAD, and one for mapping, one for IDAX, or as I said, NCIC, one for radio, and one for phone system. Could I add additional? I could, but there's really no need in it because we're good. Everything else that we have right now with the other programs that we're using just integrate. They're mostly all web-based platforms, so it's easy to, and you can have it pulled up, you can leave it minimized however you want it to be.
Excellent. So, you've got that system there that integrates easily into what you have set up already. Now I want to go back over to Stephen to kind of talk about the technology side of this, and when you're getting into different products that are going to be going out to different centers for different things, whatever it might be. I guess what. And if you can talk about this as well, like for you and your team, what are some of the discussions or the thought process that goes into some of these products that are being put out there for the dispatch centers? Is it is this going to be something that can integrate seamlessly with their current system, or will they have to add another monitor? Like what are some of the thoughts that go into this?
Yeah, thanks, Ricardo. I think from my perspective, we're usually talking about sort of what does the user need and what problem are they trying to solve. And a lot of times, these are really core sort of like need to solve this problem in a certain amount of time, especially in the dispatch center. So in our products, we're really thinking about multiple ways to do the same thing, whether it's sort of on the command line, so you don't have to use your mouse, or it's using a mouse for somebody maybe is not trained as well on that, or it's through multiple different systems. But we're consistently trying to integrate more and more systems into your workflows. And I think what's interesting about public safety, and especially I think coming more from like a person and a team that's building the technology, 80% of the needs and sort of the feature requests and sort of what people want is usually about the same. But you have that 20% that goes across that, individual agencies want, I do my workflow just this way and this little bit of a tweak there. Another one, I do this workflow another way. And you can kind of paint yourself into a corner as a technology vendor. And I think, speaking to your experience, Roxy, I kind of empathize a little bit too. I mean, I know how that situation can kind of come up and come into play, especially as a vendor and being sort of on the other side of it in certain circumstances. But that is one thing that, from our perspective, we've really tried to understand that configuration and that workflow is always going to be a part of the system itself. And vendors really need to account for that as sort of like, what's the configurability of your system? Can you account for different types of workflows and different ways of doing sort of the same action? Or is your system sort of like hard coded to only do things in one way? And it takes a lot of engineering work in order to make it change to do another way. And when you talk about sort of like the customization and engineering work, that's when sort of the numbers don't match up when it comes down to price versus sort of the ability for the company to go and do it. So we've at Mark 43 really dove really hard into the configurability of the system so that we can accommodate a lot of different workflows, a lot of different things across many different types of users. And then the second piece about that is within the interoperability piece of that. It's actually hard to come back and sort of go this in arrears and come and say, hey, I want to be interoperable as a platform. It's a lot easier to come into it with a new system like we were able to do a few years back and say, hey, what what if we thought about this from scratch, and what if we thought about this as less of just a tool for computer dispatch and more about as a communication hub where the modern standards that you see in enterprise and consumer space of that sort of like public facing application programming interfaces are sort of really prevalent. How do we make that a big part of our DNA as how do we build this company and make it so that we publish something that any other vendor can go and build out integration to without even having to get on a call and just like you're saying you know figure out like okay what data are we passing back and forth and what's the interface going to look like and who's going to do what. That's sort of been ingrained into our DNA from the start, sort of building that open sort of API from the beginning. But it's hard to go back and have that, and come back and say, hey, I don't have that today. I need to have that in the future. And I think that's why you see a lot of that in the industry. It just costs money and time and pain from pretty much everyone involved to take these applications and glue them together, and nobody wins in the end, right? Like neither the vendors nor you, the customers, nor the public, really.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard thing. Oh, who's gonna?
I think that's true. That is, I guess I should bring back, because some of the issues that I have had are with the interfaces with our CAD and everything else. It's like you buy a piece of software or hardware or whatever you want to call it, and it's like, yeah, we can work with your CAD. Well, yeah, you can. Everybody can work with it. I mean, that's the thing is I can work with it because one technology works to the other. But when you actually get down to it, it's like, well, yeah, I can do this, but it's either going to cost you $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever it is for that interface, and no matter what software it is, what if it's a QA or if it's a CAD or it's a texting, whatever, it will, yeah, it'll work, but it might cost you X amount of dollars for the software. But yeah, to get it to work seamlessly or the seamless integration, it's going to cost you another 15, however many $1,000 for that interface, which is annoying as hell. Because, and I know it's all the companies have to make the money. I understand that. I'm not an idiot, but it's like, but it's just like, it's irritating because you want this, it should be able to work easily, or they all can't be that much difficult. I'm not a programmer. Believe me, I'm not, but it is very annoying when we're trying to, from the PSAP side, when we're trying to make what's better and make it easier for our folks that sit in the chairs, the 24/7, to come up with this. Everybody's got a cool piece of software, but it doesn't work with my CAD, or it doesn't work with Roxy's CAD, or it does work with this one, but it doesn't work with this one, or yeah, it'll work with it, but it's going to cost you X amount of dollars to get it to work right. Or we can just kind of band-aid it and it'll work okay, but that's not really the way it was designed to do. And that's what is super frustrating on my side, from the director side. And I see Roxy's been shaking her head as well, so I know that we get that, and Chad has too, of being in the PSAP side. That's where it's so frustrating on our end.
And not to mention, just to add on to that, like once it may work when you build it once, right? And then what happens when you change out a system or you continually go down your path, like those things that were maybe built custom start breaking again, and you have to redo that cost again. So there's, I mean, even as a vendor, I see that pain. And obviously from a vendor side, you have to pay the people that do the work to go and connect these systems. But I don't see so much value in that model of operations as a whole as well, right? Like I think that's one of those things that if possible, the industry needs to get out of like these custom, like one-off between this application and this application and this application. You're spending all your money on doing those things, especially in the dispatch product, where it needs to be sort of that hub of everything connected, and not spending money on sort of like the value-added stuff that is, the application or the function or the problem that you're really trying to solve. And there's a lot of value in sort of the integration itself, but those things tend to be much more transient and less able to be transferred over to another application as you upgrade the versions and things like that.
Right.
Is there a way to get away from so many, customizations and such? Like, I mean, a
Yeah,
lot of
funny, I mean,
people
funny
ask
you
about
ask.
it, but
I think I think you can take a page and sort of a page out of sort of the enterprise handbook and sort of the enterprise playbook for enterprise software as a service. And this is sort of out of some of my experience with other enterprise SaaS kind of products. So what's happened in enterprise products, or you're talking about like similar products might be like a Workday for HR management, or even like a Microsoft Teams or a Slack or something else like that, an enterprise product that people use. All those products essentially publish like these open sort of public APIs, and they make that a contract. Say like, hey, if you use this programming interface, and you send requests to this, it's going to do the same things that our application is going to do. So it's not sort of like in the silo somewhere else. And two, we make a promise through this contract that we're not going to break it as we sort of upgrade the product and upgrade the systems over time. And so you're not going to have to redo the effort essentially as we make changes to the systems. And then sort of if enough companies in this space sort of make these sort of standard interfaces or standard, insert points into their applications, it becomes actually fiscally available for every company to sort of start building these standard interfaces in between different products that are commonly built together. And I think that's sort of one of the the core sort of things that we've been trying to do with the industry, sort of with Carbine, with Chad's company on the phone as well here, sort of building out this ecosystem of like-minded players that sort of build out public ways of going at and doing things, integrating into their own applications, that they make a contract with those other partners that, hey, we're not going to do this, and we're not going to try to go into your business in a certain way, right? Like you have to be humble enough that you're not going to do everything for the dispatcher and say like, I'm going to take this in the future. There's always some part of that, I think, in business, but it's understanding that there's a lot of room for players in the market, and integration is better for the end users, better for the industry when it comes down to it, as a strategy, rather than trying to build these walled gardens where everybody thinks that they can own everything.
What are your thoughts on that, Chad?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, in this market, like Steven said, there's lots of room for different players in the market, right? Here at Carbine, when we talk about partnerships and integrations and interfaces and things like that, what we're looking for is like-minded companies, right? Somebody who's innovative in the whole 9 yards. When I left the 911, the dispatch center itself, when it came to the private side, there was three things that I was looking to really help make a change in. One of them was innovation, because at that time we were lacking it huge in the public safety space. So innovation, automation, right? Making sure we have dispatchers today and call takers who are faced with having to do so many things at once. And let's face it, we're human, right? And there's only so much that you can take in at once. So trying to automate as many pieces of the puzzle as possible, and then complete aggregate all of the data into one single location, one single platform. So that way it's in ease of our call takers and dispatchers. They're faced with a hard job. And like Steven said, when you actually get all these like-minded companies going down the same path and not pulling in several different directions, that's when we're actually seeing progress, like the progress that we've made with the Mark 43s of the world, and being able to really kind of make a change within the space. You've got to move forward, and you can't stay in that past legacy type environment. And we got to be flexible. And that's the great thing with innovation and technology today. The way it's built, we're extremely flexible, customizable. Yeah, I mean, to a point, obviously, every single, over 6,000 PSAPs in the country, we've got to be flexible somewhere, right? And then, companies like ours, we're dealing from a global basis, not just the US. So there are many different components that we're dealing with outside. So that's what's really helping bringing even more innovation into the US market as well. So, the companies are getting there, and getting everybody on the same page and integrating all of our technology together and getting these like-minded folks is just going to bring huge benefit into the market.
So, Roxy, I want to go to you here on this. So, listening to what the both of them have just said, and also, so this is kind of a two-parter because we were really talking about seamless integration and stuff, and that was one of the questions that was on here that I was going to ask both you and Rob. You know, is seamless integration a must-have for new technologies? But before you answer that as well, um, from what they've both been saying, how does this make you feel? Like, to me, this is pretty good because I want to hear about more companies that are, you know, like-minded individuals that are doing, you know, some of the same things, being on the same page. There's a lot of competition out there, and you know, it's going here and there all over the place. And to be able to have something that would have that type of integration, um, you know, I don't know, that would be, I think would be a lot easier. At least that's my opinion. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that in a way, it's kind of frustrating because in 2021, why is this just now being a conversation that's being had in this industry? How do you make it easier on your customer?
Mm-hmm.
So we're not there yet. I mean, I feel like that's kind of my first feeling.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is I think that having seamless integration is great, and I think that it's a great idea and prospect, but when it comes down to it, I think that you got to see where the rubber meets the road, and are you going to employ individuals who believe in that mindset? And I'm a little on the fence there. I mean, I would love to see that happen for everyone and people's experience not be like mine. I've had to fight and claw and, you know, get pretty angry for the things that my folks deserve. And I shouldn't have ever had to do that. You know, I've worked in this industry for almost 20 years, so I'm not a new girl. I know what we need and why we need it. And, you know, I just feel like if I had that sort of experience, there are people who have less resources, less money, less guidance, less everything that are probably going to have that same experience too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think seamless integration should have happened 10 years ago. So this wouldn't have had to have been a conversation for anybody to have.
For sure. Now, so just adding to that, are there new standards that directors have or are expecting from tech companies, industry partners?
Well, I feel like I shouldn't have to do your job.
Mm-hmm.
I get paid to run a 911 center. I get paid to make sure that we're serving our citizens to the best of our abilities. I'm giving you all this money because I need you to commit to giving me the product that you told me that you could do. I don't care how it happens. I don't care. I think the new standard is we're dealing with less help on the floor. We're dealing with less help in the office. We just don't have time to babysit vendors anymore. We just don't. Mm-hmm. I work shifts too, Ricardo. You know that. And,
right.
You know, I don't have time to wear even another hat to help make technology what it should be within our PSAP.
What about you, Rob?
You know, I'm sitting here thinking I spent many hours when I was on the NENA board dealing with I3. And we dealt with I3 daily. We couldn't get the companies to come together on I3, let alone, and that's just a handful of, you know, the handful of people that have basically the 901 network, you know, with I3, let alone let's trying to come up with a standard for the however many CAD vendors there are out there to have, you know, a standard API for everything to kind of go through. Because then people's like, well, I'm losing money on this, or I'm not. Then it takes when you have that, it takes their little niche out of the whole equation, you know, because everybody buys a CAD for their own certain, because they like this little piece of it. But the first thing you ask a dispatcher is, what CAD do you have? And they're going to go like, oh my God, it's the worst CAD in the world. That's what is said anytime that you ask a dispatcher. No, I've been in PSAPs all across the nation and in conferences. It's like, what CAD do you have? The first thing that a frontline dispatcher says is, God damn, it's the worst CAD in the world. I hate it. That's just it's what's always said. So how can we, when it took us years to get i3 for one kind of a central development for that, how can we do the same thing with companies like Mark 43 and Carbine and all the others out there that don't get butt hurt, and quite honestly, that when you're wanting to add an interface for that, because, oh well, we can do it, but it's going to take this, where we shouldn't have to do that. Like Steven said, it shouldn't be about it should be what's better for everybody instead of what's, the company's making the gain on it or whatever. So the seamless integration needs to be there, but there's people way above our pay grades, that the five of us that are sitting here, that determine those things, that there's like, well, we're not going to do that because of this. It would be great. I would love to have it. And I would love to say, yeah, I want my CAD, every CAD that you can go to, the Nina, the APCO, the Navigator, any, chiefs of police conference, anything that has a CAD set up that you can go through and look at it and have the same functions and the same features, everyone that you can get everyone, but you just can't do that. It needs to be that way.
Well, and you can't even get responsiveness from vendors of existing technology half the time. Right. So, I think that was my first fear going into all of these upgrades was, am I just going to sign on to have even more problems than I do now? I have to call 18 different numbers and email 5 different support emails just to get one question answered.
And then they point fingers at each other. No, it's not mine. It's
yeah.
And Chad and Steven, I'm not blaming you guys, believe me or not. But that's just the
like,
that's just the way it is.
To go.
Yeah, it's like, well, I gotta check out of here. Thanks, guys. It's been but you know what it's like. You guys deal with this all you guys deal with this every day. It's like, hey, Mike, a dispatcher or director like us send a message like, oh my God, you're getting this, like, what's the issue? It's like, well, it's not, and you get some of those like, oh, that's not mine, it's this, and everybody starts pointing fingers, and we in the PSAP we get fed up with it. It's like, just fix the son of a bitch. That's all it is. Yeah. Just fix it. And I know that's where we get there. And you guys think the same thing too. You guys have to.
Now, before I want to get to the both of you here in just a moment, Chad and Steven. I just wanted to read something out of the comments here really quick. So Halcyon says, it's easier to deal with shortcomings of a product when the customer service is in place. I don't necessarily need a product to be perfect or with seamless integration if I have a company that will answer my questions and help when needed. And she also goes on to say that, yes, short staffing makes us more reliant on the technology as well. So when we have to solve staff and tech issues, it's double the work for things that should reduce the workload. Yes, both good comments there. So Chad, I want to start with you really quick here on the same thing. We're talking about seamless integration for technologies, but also these standards that directors might have that they're expecting from tech companies. Just really kind of, your thoughts on what both, Roxy and Rob has said.
Ultimately it comes down to responsiveness and ownership, right? If you're going to integrate into another platform, or you're going to work with another vendor and have this partnership, then you own it. And you've got to have those measures in place that you're responsive 24/7, 365. That's when the dispatchers and call takers are working, right? Nothing goes down at the right time, right? Because there is no right time. Things go down when it's the worst call possible, right? And then everybody's adrenaline raises and everybody gets anxious. And I knew what it was like when I was in the dispatch center, and all of a sudden CAD went down. I think dispatchers wanted to punch out, like, okay, yeah, CAD's down. I'm out. What is this paper and pencil thing, right? So it's 100% responsiveness, a single contact point, getting everything back up online, and making sure that basically downtime is to a minimum. You're looking for those 5 nines of uptime, and making sure that you have a resilient system, not just resilient on the on the PSAP side, right? You've got to have resiliency on the actual vendor side as well. So doing your homework is very important, obviously, for the PSAPs, and then on the vendor side, making sure that you're doing everything you can to make sure that your customers are getting the absolute best service. They're dealing with massive life-saving infrastructure, and you're a part of it, whether you're answering the phone or not, right? The call takers and dispatchers have got the hardest job in the world, and they're relying on you for them to actually be dependent on. So it really comes down to that. Whether if you're going to enter into a partnership on an integration, then you own it, right? And you've got to be there for them 24/7. And I think that is really where the mindset of the vendors have to be these days.
Right. What about you, Stephen? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, if I were to give any advice around, so for folks in the PSAPs, it's the term custom software. It should be sort of a dirty word, because in reality, it may be exactly what you wanted. What it also means is that it's going to be really hard for that company to support you, just to what Chad was talking about, because once you have something custom, how does a vendor, on the flip side of that, if you think about like a vendor supporting custom software, it becomes a silo, as we were talking about on the vendor side. That becomes something that becomes a very big and real risk to the supportability of that software going forward. So, it may be good the first year, but talk about it 5 years from now. And we've definitely come into a lot of situations where that's sort of the situation at the PSAP, or it's a situation at the law enforcement agency. And it's not a really good situation to be in, because when you call, there maybe not even is a person that even knows what's built there and how it works. So that's one point there. But I think getting back to the standards piece here, you have NINA, you have APCO, and sort of the NEAM standards out there, sort of with the vendors, and I've been part of some of those conversations as well. It's hard for it to go. I've seen it sort of been a little bit frustrating seeing it. A lot of the mentalities across the vendors, sort of, hey, let's talk about like the data elements that should be captured, and like, iterate on those and figure out like, what is the real standard should be, and not a lot of action when it comes down to it. Like, okay, let's talk about what you can already pass back and forth between. What is my interface? What is my open API? Can I show it to you? Can you start playing with it? And then you can start to have a lot more productive conversations around that. A lot of those data elements, a really good opportunity. I think it's something. For example, I think a good corollary and sort of parallel is in the healthcare industry is the HL7 standard. Again, a really difficult thing to help make sure that like EMR, EHR, healthcare companies work together to pass back a certain format of information. It has made progress, but I think a lot of it goes back to like, okay, at some point you just got to do things, right? You just got to start making that information available from your system, and then iterating from there, rather than talking about what the standard should be and not having anything shown and in live essentially to prove it, right? And I think that's really where I would start from a vendor perspective. And you're right, Roxy. I don't think it's the purview. Like, you shouldn't have to worry about what that standard is, really. It should be something that at these bigger sort of conferences and things like that, that's a really good place to sort of establish, hey, we all should be doing these things. And if we're not, like, why aren't we? And maybe, push the industry forward a little bit.
Is some of this stuff going back to basics in a way, going back to basics and then kind of just building on top of there?
Yeah, but I think a lot of it, you can get really overwhelmed with like sort of the number of fields and data elements in the NEAM standard, for example. So I think a lot of it goes down to like, well, instead of that thinking about that way, well, what if I just implemented one interface that allowed people to transfer information about, maybe it's a request for assistance or something like that, simple information that you could go across, just very standard way that you could get out of my own system. And then let's go from there. We'll see if like anybody can use that. And then we'll, as more and more things become useful, you start to develop towards that, and taking the right mentality, sort of iteratively getting to it rather than trying to, spend a whole capital expenditure to get to this entire standard and then say, hey, we're ready, without really like a use case to test it on. I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. There's a lot of cost, obviously, in just implementing an entire standard across all the data elements for CAD. But if you think about it incrementally, like, hey, there's a few things I could do now, a few things that this agency in particular would get a lot of value out of. Let me just start building, and then eventually we'll get to it, but not have to spend the entire effort trying to get to something that we don't necessarily know is going to be a lot of value.
Excellent.
Stephen, can I interrupt real quick? I want to ask you, this has been bugging me since the beginning. Where did Mark 43, is that? Please tell me, please tell me it's from the Iron Man Mark 43 suit. Please tell me that's where you guys got your...
100%.
Thank you. That's all I care about. You don't have to go through anything else. That's all I needed to know. Thanks. My day is complete. Thanks.
Just a short side story about that. So the founder, Scott Crouch, is sitting drinking a wine. He loved Iron Man, and he wanted to name the company Mark 42 after the original suit. But there was a domain squatter sitting on that who wanted $600,000 for that domain. And so, what's better than Mark 42? Well, Mark 43, that was $10.
So you shouldn't. So you're seriously, it is named after Iron Man's the suit.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I think you're bullshitting me, but I'm going to go with it.
Oh, no, awesome. I am not. That is 100% it.
That's awesome. I actually text Ricardo. I found the Mark 43 suit on through one of the Funkos, and I'm like, oh, this is the Mark 43. That's awesome. All right, day complete again.
His mind is blown.
It is actually it is crazy. But seriously, that has been bothering me since we started this 57 minutes ago. So,
jeez. That's awesome.
Oh, God.
So I just wanted to look into the comments here really quick. Joyce mentions, I just want super user friendly, easy to pick up in case of emergency, and a TERT team deployed. I want simplified, not extra bells and whistles. It seems like that's a lot of what people say as well. Simplified, streamlined, all the words that mean the same thing, but all of it is where it's coming. And actually, to go along with that kind of segue over here, and Stephen, I want to start with you actually. So the question here, kind of going into the wrap up really of this round, the round 25 of the DRT, is why is the cloud changing the way we think of 911?
Oh, very, very interesting question. But yeah, I mean, I think even you talk about this 5 years ago, and I was at conferences trying to talk about like going and putting your CAD in the cloud, and there's a lot of skepticism, and now it's more about that conversation of when, not if, right? And I think a lot of that goes down to changing the model that you think about responding to a 911 call, right? Right now, I think there's a physical limitation, especially with the PSAPs, but it's sort of like NG911 and sort of like the cloud, move to the cloud of the ESINet type of functionality, and sort of the ability for calls to be routed in many different places. You can start to think about a much more resilient model of operations when you talk about responding to a 911 call, where it's not based off of locations and like servers and things that are in particular at a specific location, where maybe a hurricane takes that out and then you're out of luck. But a more distributed model where maybe your dispatch and your call taking is actually disparate across a wider region, and that's actually happening in particular, I think, with the remote, like across my company. We've found really good ways of working remotely and not all in the same location. I think it's happening all across like the PSAPs as well, especially the forward-leaning ones, where then your disaster recovery plan becomes a lot more resilient when you talk about you're testing your essentially DR every single day. And you need to know, essentially, as that cloud comes, it comes with the ability to sort of distribute your workload across a lot of different places, a lot of different users, and sort of be flexible to those needs. But it also does need buy-in from, essentially across the tech stack all the way down, to make sure that the rest of your tech stack sort of also doesn't have that physical need. But you can get into these very interesting operational models as the cloud is getting adopted. And then the same thing from the interoperability perspective. It really helps because it consolidates sort of the access point and the entry point. And for cloud native systems, I think you're going to find that interoperability is just easier because you can't build, essentially single customized cloud native systems. You have to sort of think about it as sort of like a multi-tenant sort of view, and a sort of a view that it aligns a lot better with interoperability in general. So I think it's all sort of a good thing, but be careful around your sort of internet connectivity, and sort of your connectivity becomes sort of a critical infrastructure need. That's something that we really talk about a lot with dispatch centers that are considering our product.
Excellent. How about you, Chet?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen hit it right on the head, and I won't repeat a whole lot of what he said, but I mean, 24 months ago when we were having these conversations with a lot of the PSAPs, obviously a lot of resistancy, a lot of, walls being put up, and like, I don't know about this whole cloud thing and everything along that lines. But then obviously 20 months ago hit, right? And now there's a lot more conversation about cloud and remote work, and how are we connecting, and like Stephen said, making sure that a vendor's regions are set up properly, so you're not dependent on the equipment sitting inside of your shop and nobody there to maintain it, right? So it really brought a lot of awareness to this, and to that point, we've had one particular customer statewide that actually ended up having to put the whole center remote, and they were operating from homes. And that resilient region where they didn't have to worry about being inside and making sure that equipment was running was huge. So they were able to actually do this. Unfortunately, they're back in that mode. They were back into the operation, and now they're back home because it hit again. And it's a very unfortunate situation, but now they know that no matter what hits them, whether it's weather related or medical related, that they are able to sit on top of an environment that they can actually operate remotely from the cloud. But the biggest benefit that we've heard from a lot of the customers is no downtime for updates and upgrades. The push is seamless. They're tired of having technicians come in and actually have to relocate a call taker or a dispatcher so they can do that upgrade on that equipment, and it's all seamless now. So big change from the environment that I was in just 3.5 years ago.
Awesome. Roxy, what are your thoughts when you're talking about the cloud and changing the way we think of 911? Also, to add to this, along with what you're going to say, just Joyce had put in the comments here, remote work may be a key way to retain and attract to the field.
Yeah.
So I think she's correct. I think that we as a community and a profession are going to have to start looking for ways to shift our focus on our workflow. So I think remote is going to be it's going to have to be something that we consider as a profession really soon, because I think that it's going to give us another advantage in recruitment and hiring for those types of people who thrive in a more remote environment. I'm going to end on a positive note. I'm lucky to be from a state who has a statewide ESINet deployment. And I can't tell you enough about how much I appreciate that. Having our 911 center go down a couple of times over the past few years, I mean, pitch black, completely nothing. It is a super comfort to be able to go out to my citizens and say, if you stay on the line, I know that this county and this county will pick up. And same for them. We have more of I don't want to say a team atmosphere throughout our state, because we're all helping each other because of ESINet, and we're all taking each other's calls, and we're all coming together to help our state. Having text to 911 and text from 911 all through our ESINet platform and our mapping solution, I'm very lucky to come from a rural state that has such forward-thinking technology. As far as the cloud, I think something that I find the most frustrating is that, I have a CAD that is not cloud-based. And I can't tell you how many times in the past 2 years I've called support and they've said, oh, well, that's because you're like 5 versions behind. Well, if we were on the cloud, that could just get pushed and I wouldn't have to worry about that. So I think cloud is where we have to go. And I think that the more people we can get to thinking about doing a cloud-based solution, the better. So
Awesome. Rob?
I agree with Roxy. Luckily here in Indiana we have a very strong ESI net. We've got a statewide 901 system, and I actually have 2 crash carts, or 2 not carts, but 2 crash kits. One's in my mobile EOC, and one's sitting in my office here. That if my 901 goes down, I can take my crash kit and go basically anywhere in the state and start answering 911 calls and not miss a beat, and have a webcam and do all that stuff. So it's fantastic. Like you said, Roxy, it is fantastic to be able to have that and know that we don't, that my neighbors to the north or my neighbors to the south or east or west or whatever can answer my calls while I relocate within 10 or 15 minutes.
yeah.
So it's great. And I feel so appreciative to have that when I know the neighbors in Illinois and Ohio and Kentucky that cannot do that, so, but yeah, it's great. It's great to be able to have that type of stuff.
Excellent. Man, this has been an excellent conversation. I am so happy to have had all of you on here for round 25 of the Dispatchers Roundtable. And those were only like 3 main questions that we were going off of, and we had this big ass discussion about, and I think we'd be able to talk even more about so much more that is going on. But again, thank you all for being on and just going back and forth on on this goal of the discussion, just trying to figure out better ways to integrate and talking about the cloud and all those other things. Before I close off here, I did want to ask one more question, and I want to know, like, how do you think AI is going to play into 911? We got people like, oh, I don't know.
if you think about it, it's already it's already there in a form, with the station-based alerting, with fire station-based alerting. That's pretty much already an artificial intelligence, because it takes everything out of the dispatch and it runs off of your CAD call types, your MSAG, and all that stuff. So that's already probably the first step in your AI for dispatch. If you think about it.
Right.
And I agree with Leah's comment there.
Yeah, yep. That's a whole other conversation there. The reason I was asking is because people have talked a lot about AI and automating different processes that we do in dispatch and everything, and I always ask the question of, is that going to end up taking away the human element? Like, I don't think it'll take it away all, but you would automate some of those processes, right?
Well, like I said, the station-based alerting, it does take away a little bit from the dispatcher and the initial side of it, from the initial response, but you still have to have that person listening to the trucks and listening to the apparatus and determine for your PARs and stuff that it doesn't really, I'm going to sneeze, that doesn't affect, but it does. You still have to have that human element, but it does take away a tiny bit. When I was able to get it in my former PSAP, we pushed that it was going to be able to not necessarily take away from one of the dispatchers, and I could do away with one of the dispatcher positions, but it would give me an additional position with a long-term effect that we wouldn't have to have this person for the years. So, but I think it's cool. Yeah. It is a definite another conversation. Roundtable 35 is going to be AI in dispatch with the same group here. So with the way Ricardo is, so let's see, in another 10 episodes. So we'll shoot for the end of April.
I don't know, man. We might have to do this one sooner than that. This was really good. Again, it was good to have all of you on here, and yeah, we should look into that topic in a little bit more in a future round. So I'm going to be right back here with each and every one of you. And as we're going into the wrap up, I just want to thank all of you for joining us here on the Dispatchers Roundtable, round 25. If you ever have any topics or any questions or anything that you want to throw out there for the DRT, you can send them to my email, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter, that is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook, that is facebook.com/Within the Trenches Podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, Rapid Deploy, as well as Carbine. If you have any anything you want to look for to be able to support us as well, you can check us out, and that's going to be patreon.com/WTT podcast. This can be seen on Facebook, LinkedIn Live, YouTube, as well as Twitter. And you can, if you are a patron of the podcast, you actually get this in an audio version as well. It's a perk for patrons only, but for the flagship show, Within the Trenches podcast, you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.